This is a Save or Die special report. Hi, this is DM Jim here with a Save or Die field report recorded live at the Yukon Game Convention held in Ypsilanti, Michigan the weekend of November 14th through 16th, 2014. The following is the What is the OSR Anyway panel discussion held at that very con. The host of the panel was the head of the OSR Track, Ryan Thompson, and the panelists were Tim Snider of Goblinoid Games, Adam Muszkiewicz from Gods of Ur-Hadad, and Doug Kovacs and yours truly for Goodman Games. Enjoy.
Throw out a little blurb about sort of what the OSR means to each of us, what exactly it is to each of us, and then we'll go through and take questions and answers, presuming we've got time after we kind of roundtable it up and argue with each other and get blood on the walls and stuff. We're fighting, right?
Oh, I didn't know it was that kind of...
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know it was that kind of debate.
Well, that's round one.
They're bringing the weapons up.
That's, yeah.
Exactly.
You have to prove you're right by force of arms.
You're going to take Thunderdome. Are we going to fight that?
Oh.
So they've provided these nice white tablecloths to catch all the blood.
Oh,
Exactly.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Labyrinth Lord is better than Pathfinder, and anybody who disagrees, I'll take you on one at a time. All together.
Don't find me disagreeing.
Whoa, bringing out the big guns right off the bat.
What's better than Pathfinder?
I kid. Just make that.
Well, I think a lot of things. Most things.
Yeah, most things.
It's your party,
start?
sir. It's your party. You started.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, Ryan.
Yeah, we're all invited.
Why don't you introduce us?
Sure.
Yeah.
I expect cake.
First off, we'll start from this end.
Oh,
Introducing you.
oh, okay.
Go back the other way.
All
so
right.
that I don't put you on the spot. Maybe I
All
will
right.
put you on the spot now.
Yeah, I had to go
Over
get
here,
busy.
we have Tim Snider, who runs the Savage Afterworld blog. If you're familiar, hopefully you are. If not, lie to him and tell you are anyway. Also, the co-author of Cryptworld.
Yep.
The author of Deviant database supplements for Mutant Future.
Mm-hmm.
You can buy his stuff downstairs.
You should buy his stuff downstairs.
You should.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I should have brought more stuff down because I sold it out loud today.
Aww.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, did
Well,
I?
that's good. Hey,
Yeah,
congratulations. You sold out.
It's great, but it's like, oh yeah, I also want that. Seriously? I mean, yay, but I should have packed a lot more.
Up next in our lineup, we have Doug Kovacs. Yes.
Yeah,
Who,
it's me.
as I termed him and sold the con on him being kind of our main guest of honor in this particular track, the way that I sold him is he is the face of Dungeon Crawl Classics.
Face. Not my art.
His art
Art.
on those covers is what you're seeing every time.
Although every time you look at a
those things
wizard
up.
inside, you're probably looking at kind of Doug anyway.
Uh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
use a mirror.
Yeah, a lot of nodding going on in that one.
Everything is a self-portrait, they say.
They do say.
Especially the sexy ladies.
That's very much a self-portrait. And the cat knees.
The cat knees,
Cat
whatever.
knees. Total self-portrait.
All self-portraits.
Yep.
Spiritual.
Next up, we have Jim Wampler, both the Spellburn and Save or Die podcasts. Also, this weekend we have some demos of. We're allowed to talk about this since you're running it, right?
Mutant Crawl Classics.
Yeah.
In the catalog, you got to be able to talk about it. That'd be
Two play tests.
That's all we do is talk about it.
Two play tests of a game called Mutant Crawl Classics RPG.
Which I believe that they're actually both sold out, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
I mean, if you've either played DCC or Gamma World, this is your game.
Excellent.
All right.
Adam Muszkiewicz of the Dispatches from the
Kickassastan.
Kickassastan
Adam Stan.
blog and the Gods of Ur-Hadad zine.
All right.
If you don't have those, you can buy those downstairs at the Goodman Games group as well. They're pretty awesome.
The theme there is three things that are hard to pronounce.
Yeah, there you go. So now I'm going to be a jerk, and I am going to start this thing off with Tim because if I finish, he's not here to jump to.
All right.
That's my excuse.
All right. Ask your question.
The question is, same as everybody else here. What does the OSR what does that mean to you? What do you see it as being?
Well,
That's like the hot button topic right now.
you ask a good question, Ryan. I've given that some thought and some consideration. All right. The definition of the OSR is something that has been thought about. Hell, most people can't even decide what the R stands for.
This is true.
So the question is kind of one of those open-ended kind of personal things. So I guess, my definition of the OSR varies from a lot of other people's. A lot of people see the OSR as being fairly classic Dungeons & Dragons 3D6 based. I mean, or at least that's the impression that people get. I don't see it as being that, because that was not the games I played growing up. I mean, I played AD&D like everybody else, but that wasn't really the games that I focused upon. So the games that I was playing back in the 80s would have been Paranoia, Traveler, the Pace Setter system, none of which even remotely resembles 3D6 D&D fantasy. But the first two words in old school Renaissance or revival or whatever they'll say are old school. So for me, 1984 is old school. Therefore, games that have that kind of play style, that kind of attitude, that is how I envision it. So a lot of people see the things that I do and they kind of equate me with being like running an old school blog. But if you look at my blog, I've never written a word about Dungeons & Dragons ever. It's been Mutant Future, which is a game that's been out recently, comparatively speaking. I've written a lot about the Pace Setter system, which granted is from the 1984, but it is also not your classically envisioned thing. So if I can be viewed as being old school OSR and not having addressed any of the typical stuff of that genre, that means that, well, I don't know what that means. I don't have it.
Well, it is saying that basically, you can't just tie it down to one rule system,
You
right?
cannot. You absolutely cannot. You absolutely cannot. The three rule systems that I just mentioned, as for me, you weren't here, and it was a great.
It's okay.
It was a great point.
I'm sure it
you
was.
should have been here. But
I wanted to be.
Paranoia, Traveler, and the Pace Setter system. Hell, I'll throw in Marvel Superhero, the Face Rip system.
Yeah.
And none of those, all of those are different genres. All of them are different rule sets, but
Yeah.
all of them, in my view, are OSR. So to summarize what I was saying, I like to define the OSR the same way I define pornography, and that is that I don't know what it is, but I know it when I see it.
All right.
And he's addicted to both.
And I love both.
Yeah.
About erotic literature. Do you like that?
No pictures, no. Oh, Doug, I'd like your opinion now.
Okay, what's the question? What is the OSR?
Yeah.
To me?
Yeah.
I was talking to Jeff D. in Texas, and he told me the division between new school and old school is a skill system in a game. I'm just telling you what he told me so I can talk and you can listen to me, but I don't really care about a definition of old school Renaissance, to tell you the truth, or revival or resurrection, whatever the fuck the R is going to be, or OS can be what, oversized Renaissance, or I like, we know it when you see it, but like I don't even care what we call it. I mean, I just did something. I mean, full disclosure, I worked on 4th edition D&D for Hasbro, so I mean, whoever's paying me, I guess, but I did not love 4th edition D&D, so I guess that means something. That's true too. I'm not just making that up. So anyway, Jeff Deed said skill system, but that would make
That would make like
that would make
Traveler
Mechanoids and everything Palladium ever did not
old school.
old school, and to me it's old
Well,
school.
it would make Traveler. That would make Traveler not old school.
I never
That would
played
make
Traveler.
RuneQuest not old school. I mean, pretty much. I mean, everything that isn't directly D&D based.
Yeah, so it's. I think I like the idea that it's hard to define, and we pretty much everybody can insist and argue that they got their definition, but if everybody's equally wrong, then then everybody's right. Yeah. But I think it's like an unasked a question kind of question. Like, I would say who cares, but I guess you guys all care. You showed up, but like, you know. Yeah,
But do you think that like just asking the question means whatever answer you're going to give is going to be at least kind of wrong?
I think it like you said, it has to do with people's
right.
experiences, and it has to do with people who have been playing role-playing games or D&D for most of their lives or most of their adult lives. I mean, I started when I was 10, so, and I didn't, just because a large corporation puts out versions of a game doesn't necessarily change the game I want to play in my head, you know? You know, I don't know, like, what isn't, we're going to talk about what old school art isn't. I could say two things for DCC. It's not anime, not remotely anime. Maybe Speed Racer. Could be referenced. Maybe. Or that other robot thing that I don't know the name of.
Eggman.
These guys know. I'll ask them when I need it.
Yeah.
And it's not digital art, which a lot of OSR artists seem to disagree with me on that because they don't actually know how to paint. And all they can do is digital art. So, anyway, we'll leave it at that.
That's Doug's old school. You know, it's got to have freaking brushes,
Drops
man.
the mic.
Doesn't count.
I did do the chain, full disclosure again. I did do, for the first time, for the Chain Coffin Kickstarter, for the additional maps, I did all the maps in Photoshop.
What?
Heresy.
I did draw it and then scan it in and put it together, so technically it's not Photoshop, because that would give me a headache. But that's the first time in DCC I don't have originals for the maps. I just broke that to Mike Curtis, and he was crying. So
That'd be funny.
yeah,
I'd love to see Michael Curtis
he
cry.
cried a little bit.
That big, deep, booming voice, you know, giant guy,
Yeah.
huge
Just like a
voice,
child.
crying.
He's sensitive, very sensitive. So ask Jim.
Tag.
Jim knows.
About what Michael Curtis's voice sounds
No.
like.
OSR. What does OSR
You
mean
have been
to you?
webbed for 5 hours, and you're now suffering 10 disapproval.
That is uncanny.
Thank you.
It's very good.
I have to stop doing it because it pisses him off.
Oh,
I think I have a meaningful answer for this because any creative work that appears in a series, it's not just a single discrete work, like takes things we're familiar with, Star Trek and Star Wars. As time goes by and the series progresses, it becomes more and more self-referential. Star Trek started out being a show that wanted to do social commentary and action-adventure through a sci-fi set of tropes. And the longer Star Trek was on, the more Star Trek became about Star Trek. And I think role-playing games are just like that. So it's about how close a game or a system is to the primary sources of inspiration. Gygax and Arneson started with the Appendix N literature, fantasy literature and science fiction literature. So OD&D is very much based on those primary literary sources and a whole host of other things like John Peterson wrote about, other games that happened before then. So the rest of it is just slider bars on a soundboard, you know, rules light, crunchy, you know, ascending, descending armor class, a really lethal system versus something you can just, you know, play and enjoy. Humor, it's all just slider bars that we could all sit around and try and figure out where the exact boundary is between this and that. But if it's just really inspired by the original literature and the original things, the closer to it, the more it tends to be old school. I mean, there was a point in my life where I thought AD&D was rules light because I was 18 when I learned the system and had it all hardwired in my head. I know those spells inside out. So it is rules light to me, but you look back at that book, it's not rules light.
not a chance.
And we didn't use 95% of the Dungeon Master's Guide when we played first edition AD&D.
You didn't use encumbrance?
No.
Did you see that like, I don't know, it's like a 5 or 6 page PDF flowchart of how to run first edition combat by the book?
Oh, the initiative order alone will kill you.
I mean, it was seriously like 5 to 6 pages of just this is, if you are
The
if
point
you're
was
doing it correctly.
nobody does that.
Exactly, right? Yeah, but that's the point of even making the thing, is to demonstrate that
But
nobody
it's
plays
kind of
that way,
like
which
the
is
rule system is like, it's like a tree. You can't see the whole thing at once, or a sculpture. You can only see like
where you're looking at. Yeah.
Yeah, it's too complicated. You only use part of it. Am I getting abstract? Go ahead.
I think you are getting slightly off track. That's okay. We expect that.
This is
by
what
now.
I think.
Well, back to the fantasy literature thing, and that applies to everything. I mean, Gamma World and Metamorphosis Alpha from those science fiction books.
Yep.
I mean, the Road Warrior movies came out, and Gamma World started getting more Road Warrior. So it's a progressive thing, and it's natural. It just happens. I mean, 5th edition is not old school because 5th edition is about being different from 4th edition. And 1st, 2nd, and 3rd just got more and more complicated. And we talk a lot about D&D, but I don't mean to just focus on that. It's just OD&D is the mothership. Every game that came after OD&D references it either by being the same as or different from.
Is Magic old school yet?
To me, no, but to somebody who's like 30, it sure
Because
is.
I noticed Pearl Jam is on the classic rock still.
Yeah.
So isn't it like, eventually everything
That's
will
what
be
makes
old
it.
school, right?
This is what starts the online debates. It's like everybody's favorite doctor tends to be the first Doctor Who they saw. So that's Tom Baker for me.
Yeah.
And it's the same way with games. We all imprint on that very first game that gave us that
My lovely
virgin
wife in the back
experience.
there would like to disagree with you, and
I'm a big Tom Baker fan too.
but that was not her first Doctor.
Well, in general. I'm just speaking generally.
She's gonna break your rules, Jim.
I mean, I think. and I'm getting off topic. Peter Capaldi rules.
Isn't that old school?
What?
Isn't that old school?
What?
Breaking Jim's rules?
Yeah, breaking Jim's rules is old school. Well, actually, that actually gets me on to my point, and for me, it's. I really actually like what you said. I dig that the nearness to that which it's referencing. That makes a lot of sense. For me, though, I have to say that a lot of times it's more about the perspective of the game itself. And the experience of running it. And I guess part of this is that I'm a little bit influenced by Matt Finch's, that old school primer thing. I'm sure we've all read that at some point or another. And I will be one of those people who will say, rulings, not rules is the way to go. I think that is a core difference in when things move away from old schooliness. The more rules rather than rulings, and I'm not necessarily saying that that it has to have an absolute ton of rules, but the more things that are covered by the rules, I feel actually like that tends to remove a game from its old schooliness.
I totally agree with you. But
Right. So I think a lot of that it's about the logic behind a game in some ways. Now, that having been said, I think that there's a degree to which a lot of these story games get back to that kind of logic, but they're totally not OSR, right? I like Dungeon World. I like Dungeon World a lot. I think it uses that same kind of logic where we're more about the rulings than the rules, and just because it's not in the book doesn't mean it's not going to happen. So I think there's something else there that I don't have an answer for. There's moving back towards the rulings rather than rules spectrum, as the games industry has done again, at least in the indie sphere. Now, how do we distinguish that from the old school stuff that's obviously very different from it? And I think the way that I've come to understand that is that the difference is in a lot of old school games there is a degree of objectivity behind the rules and behind the way that things are often designed. Rarely do we go into, say it's a dungeon crawl, rarely do we go into the dungeon crawl and not know, and the DM doesn't know what's in each room. Sure, it happens sometimes, there are random encounters, there's some stuff, but there are mechanisms for that. Rarely, when someone is running a session of chill, do they not know, what the actual monster is, right? Or at least what the overall outline of, the monster's modus operandi is going to be. Same thing's true in like Call of Cthulhu. You have an idea of like this objective reality of the scenario that's playing out. I think that's those two things together, an objective existence of things within the rules, and still relying on rulings rather than just the rules to tell that story. For me, that's really the core of what makes OSR style games. That's why something like Dungeon Crawl Classics, which is totally not an actual it's not a retro clone. It doesn't have any direct reference to anything tying it to like an older edition of any game. That's why it, for me, manages that, because it has a good balance of those things. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, because the reason why it does that is Joseph Goodman made a conscious effort to go back to the Appendix N literature.
I'm saying we're both right. No, you're right. I mean, it is inspired by that stuff.
We are both right.
Yeah. So.
Him too.
Right. Exactly. That's. And all wrong.
We're all right.
So, but I know my answer's probably a little more nebulous and weird than theirs, but it's like a two-axis thing for me. It's got to hit these two things in just the right way, and then that's as close as it's going to come. I got excited about getting the James Bond 007 Q manual here. I don't know if any of you have ever read 007. It is one of the first games that has that I can recall ever reading that had definite story gamey elements in it. Like rules for dynamic rules for chases, stuff like that. But those are things that exist objectively within the rules, independent of the DM or whatever they call them in that game deciding that they're there or not. So that's the way I look at it. Sorry, I deadened the room. That wasn't nearly funny enough. Thanks, Don. Don Stroud, ladies and gentlemen.
That's a very thoughtful answer, and I really liked it.
Thank you.
And I've got to say, I liked it. I don't know.
Describing a lot of things with me, I like things that cause dissonance, and there's this point that I think the OSR exists between, needing to make rulings, like I've said, and then actually having things exist objectively in the rules. There's this bizarre dissonant stasis that it gets held in, this like magnets floating, repelling each other just right, and it hovers there, and if you go too much one way, it fails one way, and go the other, it fails that way. So it's that dissonance that I enjoy, I think. Sorry, Ryan, it's your turn. You say stuff.
All right. I've got to say, I agree with Tim a lot, and I agree with what you're saying a whole lot. And getting into what you're talking about with rulings, not rules, even getting into the older rule sets that were a little bit heavier-handed with rules, looking at a heavy-handed rule set from, say, 1984, and a heavy-handed rule set that came out last year, there's a dynamic difference there in what you can make your ruling on. There's, looking at Chaosium RuneQuest,
as so many of us have been doing right now.
Exactly. So that's my example.
Yeah.
Second edition, there's a whole lot of stuff that you could technically strip out of there and still have the core of that game run well. Mm-hmm. While looking at something that's modern, that definitely, taking something like Pathfinder or 3rd edition D&D or something to that effect, there are a lot of extras in there, like the mechanic for skills. I could not strip that out and have that system work very well, because there are classes that require on that extra mechanic within the game to make them work out. And what you get when you look at something older, and let's use AD&D as the sample here, comparing, say, a 3rd edition or Pathfinder roguelike character, you need to have this extra mechanic of skills for that character to operate. Where that character in the older versions had a set of skills, but it was built into the character itself. So stripping out skills that came around and proficiencies, say, Unearthed Arcana, will not break down AD&D so it doesn't function. Stripping out that skill set from something like Pathfinder makes you have to rule the crap out of a whole lot of other stuff in that game to make it work, or just say, well, rogues and other classes that are skill-based in this don't exist in my game because I don't want to use that skill-based rule set anymore. And so that's a part of where I see the rulings as not rules, to be
So
in effect.
You're basically saying like modularity of content
yes.
is the key.
That's a large part of it, because we still made it, like Jim said, AD&D was not really a rules-like game. But a lot of us made it a rules-like game without breaking the hell out of that game, so it didn't function properly.
Well, there isn't anything more old school than taking the rules as written and hacking them to hell and back yourself for your own group.
And that's a part where I see a massive difference between a modern rule set and an old school rule set. Because most of the modern rule sets, like my Pathfinder example, have things ingrained in them where it's really hard to rule that out without coming up with a whole new rule set to replace the vast majority of the mechanics of the game.
It almost sounds like what you're saying is that you can't take a modern rule set and run the game old school.
It's difficult.
Them's fighting words. No,
they haven't brought the weapons up yet, so they can't be fighting words.
that's right. Yeah, still waiting. What do you think? Can you do that?
I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I can do it.
What if you took Pathfinder and got rid of all the Wayne Reynolds art and replaced it with Earl Otis and just ran the same game? Would it be old school then?
No. That's a great idea. No.
Well, and I'd say
It'd be fine for me. I mean,
it just look better, really, is all. Yeah, Doug would ignore the rules anyway, so it doesn't.
I mean, do the rules count if I just completely ignore them? It's hard for me to have this conversation because there's so much I don't care about, you know? Just tell me.
I think I can explain it because I started in '79 with Holmes and some college kids that were graduating from the Brown books they'd gotten the Monster Manual. Those books were just coming out. They're the ones who taught me to play. And then we started our own little campaign with Holmes and went straight to first edition AD&D. That group played continually for 15 or 18 years. Enough for, no screwing around or fudging. I think one of my guys survived all the way up to being a 20-something magic user. And then second edition came out. And we bought all the books and just kept playing. There was no concept of editions then. These were just the new books to use. But we were still playing the same game and pretty much still running it the same way. I mean, we got some new monsters out of second edition. Was the impact it had on the campaign. Which is, I'm not saying any of this is right or wrong. This is just the experience we had. And the same thing happened with third edition when it first came out. We were still just playing D&D to us. We didn't sweat it about whether, it was first edition AD&D or were we playing basic D&D. We were just playing.
But that's unbalanced. That's an unbalanced approach, and that wouldn't fly today. I'm just making fun of you. No, no, I did the same thing.
That's why I couldn't parse that into something that made sense.
I know, right? Yeah. No, that's exactly. I mean, I think I'm not really going too far on a limb when I say that probably folks who are interested in this kind of conversation are probably folks who had a similar experience to that, right? I mean, when I was a kid, I didn't understand the difference between Palladium Fantasy and D&D. I mean, we
just grab it and play it.
Exactly, right? You just throw it all together, like, oh, well, I'm going to use a Ranger, AD&D Ranger, and, a Palladium Diabolist in the same freaking thing, because we didn't really care about any difference,
I've never played Pathfinder, ever in my life, and I am 100% certain you could run Pathfinder old school.
I think
there's a way to do it.
You could run the game old school. I mean,
halfway through the dungeon when half the party wipes, okay, that's no longer traditional Pathfinder, right?
Yeah.
That's a fact.
Running the game in the way that it's run today is obviously very different. Like if we went to go talk to those Pathfinder Society guys down there, they'd probably say that I'm sure they have their own choice words for what we the way we game. I got in an argument with one of the dudes from Warriors 3 earlier today. The dude with the chops.
Oh, Bill.
Yeah, and it was really disappointing. It was basically he didn't like Dark Sun because he didn't want to have to replace his sword ever.
Oh.
Are you freaking kidding me? I mean, that's like such a minor detail. Like, can you not take defeat that much that you don't ever want to replace a freaking, like, you don't, that's obviously a campaign element.
Yeah.
You don't want to deal with that? It was really...
But what does that mean?
Huh? They have obsidian weapons in Dark Sun, or bone weapons in Dark Sun. He didn't ever want to replace his obsidian sword, with, or, you know, he didn't want to have to deal with that in-game. It is such a...
Could he also have not liked yellow ochre?
I'm sure he
The
would not have
color.
liked yellow ochre,
All
the color.
brown paintings are
Yeah.
done in yellow ochre. If you don't like yellow ochre, you wouldn't like Dark Sun, right?
That's
No, he's right.
yeah, you're absolutely correct, Doug. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It might be burnt sienna sometimes, but
On occasion.
you know, you guys know what I'm talking about.
Not me, I'm colorblind.
Well, that's, I
It's
mean,
yellow. It's yellow.
what you're talking about is why these things turn into knife fights online.
Yeah.
When the truth is, it's just a play style choice.
Yeah.
And I've got no dog in that hunt. If you and your group like a play style that works like
But what if
Pathfinder,
it bores the hell out of you?
the reason it bores the hell out of
Do
guys
you
like
get up
you and
and
me,
leave, or do you make it interesting?
it's play style and human psychology. The reason it bores the hell out of guys like you and me is because old school, the higher lethality, the way the rule system mechanics work, is higher risk and higher reward. And you're gonna and less of an attachment to this one individual character. And that's an old school quality on my checklist is a greater emphasis on the campaign versus the individual character.
Yeah. I would agree. Yeah.
And if that's what you like to play, then that's great. And if you want to go the other way, I don't care.
Well, and I think that gives rise to, that difference of perspective gives rise to some of these other, you know, like the fiddly bits differences. Like when we talk about, an extensive skill system, an extensive feat system. If you're going to spend 2 hours making a character, you're going to be attached to that character and not expect it to die right away, right? I mean... Whereas if you go to the Purple Sorcerer, 0 level funnel generator, kick out like 6 pages worth of 0 levels for DCC, I don't care, kill him.
Unless you're playing Traveler and you just die during...
Yeah,
But that's an experience in and of itself, man. That's worth having.
well,
We've all done that, right? I mean, it was great. Man. You remember that, and it's a beautiful thing.
This was the most awesome character I never got to play.
down with my game group the other night. We were remembering, I remember Classic Travel.
I have no problem with it. I think that's just perfect.
Can I say something?
Yeah, come on. Yeah.
You know, it's interesting that you guys are really against Pathfinder so much, right? I'm a guy who...
I just said the opposite of that. I'm fine with it.
I'm a guy who defends new school stuff to old school people and old school stuff to new school people.
We need more people like you.
It's a piece.
Yeah, thank you. But a lot of these new school people, they lump in Pathfinder guys with you.
With us?
Yes, old school people. They think Pathfinder is like an old-fashioned, broken-down game.
Well, are you talking like mostly like indie gamers, story gamers,
Not
stuff like
just
that?
indie gamers, but people who are like in the 4th edition, D&D, and like other types of games like that.
Well,
So tactical board games, got it. I'm kidding. Sorry, that's just... I'm joking. That was...
Joke away. I'm not.
Also, funny
I'm not
criticism
offended when you make fun of it. It's a game.
Oh, you and I were talking downstairs. I ran 4th edition for years, and trying to make it be old school and still within the scope of its own rules was very difficult for me. I couldn't provide a reasonable challenge within the scope of the rules.
That's what we were trying to do with Goodman Games 4th edition. I worked on all the interiors for all the 4th edition Goodman Games DCC modules. And it was this constant, like, you want to have Lankmar, but you got to have a Dragon Man there. So the aesthetics kind of get ruined because there's not even elves in Lankmar,
Yeah.
And when some weird-ass humanoid shows up, it's got to be a woman with invisible skin, and you can see her bones.
Yeah.
The ghouls.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's
See, in my game,
an
that's no big deal.
aesthetic
That
thing.
happens
Like
all the
it seemed like maybe
I think I saw it downstairs,
the new school stuff pushed against the aesthetics that we wanted to go for. I'm just talking
Well,
about
new school stuff. New school D&D has, I'd say, it has its own appendix in it.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it's
what is that?
It's
Like,
referencing
yeah,
other
okay,
stuff.
all right, great. Let's hear it. What is it?
I can't really think of anything.
World of Warcraft, right?
I'd say World of Warcraft. Warcraft is medium tense.
Yeah.
Some anime.
Yes,
Yes, some anime.
Simple looks, kind of over-sexualized, or whether it be female or male, and lawyerish. And what I mean by that is it seems to me that the rules for what I'm presuming most people in this room are, and most people in general are considering new school versus old school, is we've become a very lawyer-conscious society. You look at everything and it says, you know, we may get hurt if you do this, that, or the other thing, or whatever we do, we think about the lawyers. You know, how will the lawyers react? And in AD&D in first edition, or in Traveler, the first couple of things in Traveler, I don't know about Traveler 3, 4, or 5.
Oh, we don't talk about Traveler 5.
And I don't know about Paranoid, though I've always wanted to play it. But if you look at Aftermath or Bushido, you see a game that you have 2 books, 1 book, 2 books, 3 books for AD&D first edition, right? The DMG, the Player's Guide, and Monster Manual 1. And you have this whole rest of the room of interpretation. If you play Tunnels and Trolls, there's a ton of interpretation in there. How is your group going to do it? Now you have to have 7 or 8 books. You can look up for 80%, 90% of all the possible outcomes and point to a rule, and there are people who sit and look at it and will point out that you're wrong, and it drives me crazy.
Well, I wouldn't say that rules lawyering is a new thing. I mean, it's obviously been around for ages. I mean, going back to like people getting issues of the strategic review and finding, you know, Gygax's, you know, answers to questions. It probably even goes back, you know, into the games that inspired D&D in the first place. You know,
did that? How many people sat and got all those things and didn't listen to the DM?
Well,
when the DM made a ruling and said, "This is how I want to play," I don't care.
There's a difference between talking about gaming and gaming.
Yeah.
And like a lot of the stuff that you hear that's criticism of the rules is just talking about gaming, but when you're actually playing the game, the criticism of the rules can't
becomes
happen.
actually criticism of the DM in a lot of cases.
Maybe,
you know?
I don't know, but you can't do it if you're also playing the game. Then the game breaks down to argument about the rules, and you're not playing the game anymore, right?
So let me take a spin at this gentleman's point, because I think it goes back to where we started. What 4th edition is great about, and I didn't mean it as a cut that it was World of Warcraft influence, but you've got character classes that are absolutely mathematically precisely balanced with each other.
Yes.
That World of Warcraft is built that way. 4th edition D&D is built that way. I mean, there is no question in AD&D, OD&D, first level fighter versus a first level magic user, the magic user's going down. When they get to 10th level...
Depends on the saving throw, man.
There's a couple classes in later stuff that are not balanced. So,
Rune Priest. Yeah.
Or I think Vampire is poorly balanced.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yes.
Well, when you express a generality, there are always going to be exceptions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But just to clarify.
And if... we played 4th edition D&D, and it took 4 hours to kill 4 kobolds and drove me insane. My nephews, who are all in their teens, loved the game and played it until just recently, when the 5th edition came out. Now they've hopped on that, and they love it because, I mean, they were 12 years old when World of Warcraft came out, and they love that, and there's nothing wrong with that.
They like the very specificness of it. It's comforting to them.
That actually makes me worry a bit, you know, because like we got into RPGs because it was, you know, basically let's play pretend, but now we've got cool swords and there's some rules behind it, right? I mean, it's like the raw force of imagination that goes into the gaming in the first place. I kind of worry about like the folks who have everything pre-programmed for them. You know, they have balance pre-programmed for them. They have every answer in some book somewhere, and you know they get taught that that's the right way to game. This is just me being reactionary about it. This isn't like I actually had any experience with somebody who feels that way or who acts that way. But that is to me why, you know, keeping a lot of the old stuff alive and letting people know that it exists, and that, you know, like even stuff that isn't old that feels old.
This guy wants to respond to you.
Hey, this guy I couldn't see before. What's up?
So it strikes me just as a pattern in a lot of things here that I do wonder how much, you know, when we're talking about the effects of rules as opposed to, you know, types of players, of this is a sort of self-selection element that it seems to me, you know, if you look at how OSR people, you know, who were actually there at the time, which I wasn't, for example, tend to describe early D&D, and how Forge, you know, that sort of indie games community people who were there at the time describe early D&D, and how people who were there at the time and then moved on to other editions of D&D describe early D&D. They're very different pictures, and I wonder how much of that is basically that people who had what people went on to do, whether they kept playing old D&D or shifted to new D&D or went off in wacky new directions, may be a large consequence of how their gaming groups worked when they were getting into the hobby. That, like, the thing about, you know, how much rules lawyering was there as opposed to just shutting up and listening to the DM. I think the answer almost has to be it varies intensely based on group, and the people who had the most arguments based on imprecise rules are the least likely to say, yes, ruling's not rules is awesome.
Actually, that I'm just kind of shooting in the dark here, but I think that you might be touching on something, and I think that we all might be kind of talking about kind of something similar. You know, we've mentioned rules not ruling as being, or excuse me, rulings not rules as being kind of a driving force. We've also kind of been talking about, you know, balance and unbalanced versus overbalanced. So how about something like this, that something that might define the OSR attitude is one of fairness or a lack thereof. When I was gaming back in the day and when I game now, if there is a roll that goes badly, you know, and if the player says, oh, well, that's not fair, I'm the DM, I don't care. As opposed to, oh, that's not fair, okay, well, what would be fair? How can we fix this? You as a player have input on how to change this to benefit you. And I think a lot of modern games kind of introduce that kind of player. Help me out, what's the word?
Gratification.
Thank you. So, you know, so I think that might be, because, okay, for example, DCC, which we've kind of, you know, agreed upon that it's very old school in attitude.
It's still got a luck mechanism.
Is it a fair game? No. I have been horribly mangled playing that game.
Oh, disagree.
I think that's perfectly fair.
Exactly.
You're only telling one side of the story. DCC is a swingy game, and it can swing for you just as far as it can swing against you. But when it swings against you, bam.
Absolutely. But if I disagreed with the randomness, if I wanted, you're just leaping on the edge of your chair.
Yeah, because actually DCC includes a couple of mitigation, randomness mitigation mechanisms that actually are more new school. You've got the spell burn mechanic. Yes. You've got.
You can break an adventure with that. I've done it.
You've got.
I've seen it happen.
There's the luck burn mechanic. I mean that's just two things, and you know
exactly. Invoking patron is.
There's all kinds of stuff, and so I do think that has. I think even then, like having some kind of brakes on the that really puts a brake on the swinginess. So.
What does fair mean? Do you feel like you're being cheated?
I'm not 100%.
Well, what I was trying.
Something was promised and not given.
It's Christmas all the time.
I was going to say, did you not get the pony?
I mean, no, I never get the pony.
I don't care what game you're playing. If the DM goes, rock falls on you, you die, no save. That's not a happy experience for you. And
it's
that
not
DM's
fun.
It's not fun.
It might be though.
It's not fun. It's not fair. But I'm saying that those kinds of things happen regularly in old school games that I've played. Okay, as opposed to giving the players some degree of balance to try to correct that, so it wasn't necessarily as fun.
This guy's going to respond to you.
I want to jump in real quick. Player agency.
Agency.
Encouraging player agency
was the word I
is
was
good
looking for.
DMing, and squashing it is bad DMing, whatever game you're playing.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
You're playing in my game, aren't you? Tomorrow?
Not anymore.
I want to say that there's a misconception that among some people that like indie gamers, story gamers, that they hate D&D. And it's not. I don't think it's really true. If you go on like the Story Games website, they talk nonstop about like backbeing, BX, and things like that. And they like it. I think a lot of them were turned off by like the more crunchiness of the later editions as well. And like the favorite OSR stuff of like the indie people, in my opinion, I think it's like Kevin Crawford stuff, like Stars on Number or stuff like that. And I don't know, I can't really say off the top of my head like what about that would appeal to someone who's more into like the narrative aspects of role playing, but I just
I do think that there's systems that have a wide berth for interpretation, like your more rules light game systems. They do have obviously more appeal for story gamers as well as whoever. Adam Coble, right, writer of Dungeon World. He's a big deal. He loves DCC. I mean, he does Sage Latora as well.
I'm not sure if he's mentioned DCC, but I know he's talked like about.
Adam said that he ran the Transylvania Adventures game for a year.
Yeah. Well, and we've all played with him at Gen Con. DCC with him at Gen Con, and it's okay. Maybe not all. Doug and I have, but it's and so. I think there is a recognition that there is some common ground. There's more common ground now than there used to be. I think that there's also folks on both sides of the aisle who just really fan flames. I mean, we were kind of basically slightly touched on the topic of the RPG pundit downstairs earlier. That guy isn't doing anybody any favors, The way he refers to story gamers is entirely disrespectful. It's awful. Nobody, we really shouldn't be looking at like, well, these games just categorically suck, and the people who play them are idiots, and they shouldn't. We don't have anything to learn from them. If somebody's flat out saying, I don't have anything to learn from this game system, this style of play, these people who are playing it, that guy's really making a mistake. Yeah, I mean, he's selling himself short, selling the industry short, and this guy's, apparently widely read,
To me, the OSR is like forums a few times, and most of the thing I say is they're all a bunch of nutters.
They're
like clinically paranoid. The thing with the whole swine thing is it's not just these people are idiots, it's these people are deliberately designing games that are not fun in order to drive all decent and sane people out of the hobby so that they can get an elitist thrill out of being the only ones left.
That's kind of
seriously what the RPG pundit has said.
What's insane about that?
Some Vampire the Masquerade players came.
This is what's insane about that approach. The truth is, we live in the greatest time of all human history, this moment right now. I mean, what we're here having this discussion has all been enabled by technology. Before print on demand, before email, before the internet, this OSR renaissance couldn't have existed. Now, it doesn't matter what style of game you want, you can easily play it. I mean, if you could have described the world we live in today to my 18-year-old self in 1979, it would have sounded like Star Trek. iPads and the internet.
You get a half-baked
any game. I mean, it was drive 50 miles to another town to go to the game store and hope they had the version of the D&D book you wanted on the shelf, and maybe run into some kids at the library that you could get a group together with. And now we have all this stuff. It's an embarrassment of riches.
Yeah, it really is. And I started playing in '74, and I remember the old D&D white box set. You got it, and there was some dice in it, and the 3 booklets.
The crown, right?
Yeah.
And without somebody who already knew how to play, good luck.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah, well, the reason I got it, my dad got it for me, I was in bed with an injury, a pretty severe one. My dad got it for me, so I had something to wrap my mind around so I wouldn't drive my poor mother nuts. And I think it's true with every new edition that comes out. There are people that like it, and there are people that don't. I got a cousin, he just loves 4th edition. Me, not so much. I I like what's going on at Goblinoid Games. They bought back Wizard's World.
Yeah.
That's a great game. It's a little bit heavy on the math and record keeping, but I like it.
You know, the OSR reminds me in some ways of old people who are like old comics. Because, you know, at one point it was impossible to get like reprints of old stuff. You'd like dig through boxes.
Yeah.
And now it's just you can go to the store and pick up like
your omnibus edition of
giant,
like the first 60 issues of Thor.
Yeah,
that's awesome, you know.
And like it's like that too, because when something is gone and it was so influential, people start making up things about it. Like with D&D, like there was a old, there was like a narrative that old D&D was just bad.
No, that's actually no, mine right here.
It was old D&D is bad and broken down and stuff, and now that it's like coming back, people can see maybe that's not true.
Yeah.
Right.
I really, I was really surprised when I just finally, I mean, being someone who got into gaming with the Mensa Red Box, I was really surprised the first time I read OD&D. Not because it was illegible.
Tim Cass swears on a stack of Bibles that to a miniatures wargamer at that time,
I'm positive
that was a perfectly legible rule set.
Yeah, I'll bet it was.
And it's bullshit. He's wrong.
You know, you go back and you look at it, and just from a rules perspective, man, that was robust. I could get so much gaming out of that. I feel like I could have gotten more gaming out of OD&D than I ever got out of AD&D because of the simplicity of the system. So you're right. I mean, I'm glad that this stuff is out there, and digitally now we can like look back and see all this stuff that we might have missed. Because I've never, until my 30s, I don't think I ever actually saw a white box, and so of course I never read it. It wasn't until until it was available on a PDF or something like that I could see it, And now, not only do we have the benefit of being able to look back, but we have the benefit of ease of creation of new stuff.
Plus, the ability to cherry pick.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Like
you're saying you're not just bound to the latest, or like you're not bound. Yeah, you're not bound to the latest, and you can if you want, you could play like I don't know. You could play like you said, chill. Someone would be like, why would you do that when you can play like Call of Cthulhu, or why would you do that when you can play like Monster Hearts or some new game?
Tremulous,
like that? Yeah. But it's an option. You can do whatever you want. Cherry picking is definitely good.
Well, Jim's phrase "an embarrassment of riches" I think is very accurate, very apt, because it's all there.
You want to play OD&D and not have to deal with those rules? There's like 3-4 retro clones of it where the rules are perfectly clear, and you can have that experience.
Delving Deeper. My quick plug for Delving Deeper. 74 white box retro clone, completely legible.
I think the OSR is more kind of like a mentality, really, because I mean it's more about experimentation, whereas like a lot of the newer systems, everybody, like whether you're a DM or you're a player, you've got very clearly defined roles, and that's it. You're just kind of following along. At least that's that way they kind of push you in that way. Whereas the old school kind of mentality on it is like, try different things. Take rules from here, take rules from there.
And if it doesn't exist already, if you can't find the thing you like, make it.
Exactly, make it yourself, or if you want to try something crazy with your character there, you could probably do it, and the DM makes that rule. It's not hard-coded in the book.
Yep.
You're not getting beat over the head with a book.
I love DCC, but my favorite game was Gamma World. Well, let's just pack those two together.
And the moment you do create that new rule set of that new supplement, you can click right here, and it's shared with everybody in this room and across the planet.
Yep.
For free.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very much the OSR is very much community-driven as opposed to corporate-driven.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of that has to do with like the folks who kept it alive in the meantime, right? I mean, it was a labor of love, and from a group of folks who basically you've got the industry against you at this point, right?
Where are you looking at?
Not now, but then.
I was out of gaming for like 15 years.
That's what I'm talking about. You weren't there. You weren't helping us out.
That's right.
I think
You're a jerk, Jim.
to stick with it over a long period of time, you can't count on the corporations to be with you the whole time through. At some point, you go into the darkness.
I think if history's taught us anything.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Don't count on the corporations.
So where's the old school whatever going?
Is it going?
I see there seems to be even more publishing than there was 5 years ago.
Old school Pathfinder. Something
Old school
a little
Finder.
bit newer than Pathfinder, and then
Goblinoid Games.
Pathfinder,
Goodman
Games,
Games.
Old Finder.
There were.
You need to be
Yeah.
6 years ago. Master
Yeah.
of the OSR.
Yeah.
I don't,
Oh, yeah, it kind of already is, isn't it?
Yeah,
I just played some
already
old
is.
school Necromunda,
That's
and
actually-
See, that's great. That means we're like the board.
I never-
The longer we live, the more stuff we sweep up under the
yeah,
old
yeah,
school
old
umbrella.
school is just going to be more and more stuff.
White Wolf brought back the old World of Darkness stuff, the classic
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
That's kind of what OSR is trying to do. To take something they said was dead, it's gone, we're not supporting it anymore.
Yep.
And people are into it still. And they're like, for the 20th anniversary, it's all coming back now. That is, and it's interesting that those games, they were accused of like killing old school style at the time, in like the early 90s.
Car Wars is even coming back. Well, that's only because those guys did real well bringing back Ogre for a minute, so. So I think that somebody's actually running Ogre.
Yeah.
Really?
Are we running Ogre?
It's 7 o'clock
Going
game
downstairs
here. It's supposed to be a
sometime
7
this
o'clock game.
What was that?
Muszkiewicz?
Me?
That sounds.
Hi.
We're supposed to be running the game at 7 o'clock?
Yes.
True, I was actually about to stop.
Yeah, we're gonna. We gotta stop this. But
That's up to you. You're the only thing running at 7 o'clock tonight in this room.
sweet.
Yeah.
You guys
I'm at 8.
Doug's at 8 over
we can
there.
talk for another
Everything
hour.
else starts at 8. He started at 7 because he wanted to be fucking difficult.
I didn't schedule me.
You want to give me a break, right?
Is that what it was?
Yeah, I get a break.
You get a break.
Yeah.
Okay.
You don't.
Right.
Get over there.
I haven't had a break since like 10 o'clock, except to come down and buy that crap an hour ago.
Quit whining. All right. Well, wrap this thing up.
This is old school. I need to go get a smoke, so let's end this.
Yeah.
actually, that's very old school.
I think that's a good wrap-up.
That was a good point for a break.
Well, thanks for listening to us babble for an hour.
We appreciate it.
Your attention span is excellent.
I would like to say that we have done pretty well this con at getting a lot of people registered for the old school games. We're probably going to be invited back to do this again next year. So tell people about it. We'll be starting with announcements far earlier. The con is going to be planning much farther ahead than this con normally plans. In that respect, I've already been talking to them about expanding what will be encompassed in the OSR Track next year. So we're going to be allowing all kinds of other old school games. So I just want to make this thing explode.
What about something old school using like a newer system?
We have allowed that. In fact, Shane Harsh has Ghost Tower of Inverness on 5e this weekend.
Oh, yeah.
We did not incorporate that as the old school because the con staff decided that since there was actually, by the time that we hit our stride with everybody that was requesting to run OSR games here, we outnumbered what was being done on 5e, so they slated that strictly as a 5e game, even though it's actually the Ghost Tower converted over to 5e. And he does a really good job of converting things. If you ever get to play in one of his conversions, I actually played Ghost Tower last year with him on Fate, of all things, which was real odd. Yeah, it was very strange.
It's a little twitchy.
It didn't feel like D&D at all, but that's besides the point. I
All right.
know this, but... So,
Okay, well, I've tried to run a game here, man.
Yeah.
You guys can wait for me. No.
We're done. Go home.
I didn't play your game, man, so...
Oh, you're in this game?
I'm in this game.
This has been a Save or Die special report.